Hello, my name is Carlos Uxo. I'm the coordinator of the Cuba study tour, and I will also be the person taking you to Cuba if you decide to take this unit. In this presentation today, I'm going to tell you what we plan to do in 2019. The idea is, first I'll tell you about the itinerary places we are going to visit, then I'll tell you about the topics that we'll be studying, and we'll finally tell you about how you will be assessed at the end of this unit. We start in Havana, the capital of Cuba, and in Havana we'll be staying in Casa Vera, in the neighborhood of Vedado. This area here is the most touristy area of Cuba. It will be a bit away, but it's about 30 minutes walk in Casa Vera. Casa Vera, as you can see, is a very homey place. This will be the sort of room you will be in, and this will be the sort of food you would be eating. The lovely owner of this place insists on having sort of a family place where you'll be feeling at home, and you'll be asked to carry out some tasks. For example, at the end of breakfast, at the end of your lunches, you'll have to clear the table, take everything to the kitchen. They will wash your clothes. I think they do that once a week. It's a great place to move around Havana. And things that we will do in Havana. You will have 2 lectures at the Institute of International Relations. This is the most important place in Cuba for international relations. In 2018, the 2 lectures, to give you an idea, were given by a past ambassador of Cuba in the United Nations and a past ambassador of Cuba in the European Union. So it's a high quality place. And we will discuss there the relations between Cuba and the United States and Cuba's view of international relations. Also in Havana, you will be visiting the Museum of the Revolution. Here you can see the students that went in 2018. This museum, for example, when we go to the Museum of Fine Arts, there's always a reason behind it. We want you to think how Cuba portrays itself to foreigners, what you can see, what you cannot see, what the guides are telling us about what we are seeing. So it's a very active, not a passive reception of what Cuba wants to give you, but active engagement in what you are seeing. Also in Cuba, you will be walking around Vedado and Havana. Hopefully you will be able to touch that man that touches the beard and hold the hand. He's a student from last year who did that. And if you do that, you will go back to Havana in the future. When I say walking around Vedado and Havana, again, I say this is an active walking, if you want. So you will be given an itinerary, and in groups of 3 or 4 students, you will go around Havana discovering by yourself a number of things. For example, this group, students in 2018, they actually found John Lennon, a statue of John Lennon. Obviously, the question is, why is there a statue of John Lennon in Havana? And how much the revolution has changed, because in the 1970s, the Beatles were forbidden, but today you can find a statue of John Lennon in Havana. So we'll do that in a number of places, not only in Havana, but also outside Havana. Of course, you will go to visit the Revolution Square, and we will start talking about Che Guevara and its importance in Cuba today. After, I think it's 4 days in Havana, we will be going to Santa Clara, a lot less frantic city, where we'll do a number of things. First, of course, we will discuss a lot about Che Guevara. Che Guevara is buried in Santa Clara. It's also the place where Che Guevara derailed a train, which meant the final triumph of the revolution. So we'll discuss a lot about the Che Guevara's ideology, how far the revolution is today from what Che Guevara wanted to see in Cuba. We will also go to a fantastic place called El Mejunje. El Mejunje is the first openly gay bar in Cuba. Here you have the students last year who will, if we are lucky, will see some performances. As you can see also, even in El Mejunje, you have a Che Guevara poster. But basically what we'll discuss there is homosexuality in Cuba, how much things have changed in Cuba from the 60s, where homophobia was rife and people, homosexual, were taken to camps, to today where you can have an openly gay bar in Santa Clara. Also in Santa Clara, we will go to La Piedra Lunar. La Piedra Lunar is a very interesting bookshop. It's owned by this man here. It's Lorenzo Lunar, a writer, a very famous writer in Cuba, also my friend. And the good thing, or the interesting thing about La Piedra Lunar is that it is an independent bookshop. There are not many independent businesses in Cuba, especially not many bookshops that are independently and they are owned by someone who's not the state. So Lorenzo Lunar will be telling us how or why he started this, the cultural project associated with his bookshop, etc. If you are lucky, you will be able to find treasures in this bookshop. Like this is me last year. I bought the Atlas Nacional de Cuba. Some students bought a lot of music last year. They have really good gems that you can find. After a few days in Santa Clara, we'll go to Lomas de Banao. This is the first time we will not be in a city. And we go to Lomas de Banao to study ecotourism and to work. These are some students working last year. That's me. I got even injured a little bit. But you will be working probably 2 days in a reforestation project. In Lomas de Banao, they are trying to plant many more trees, and because they had a problem with drought and erosion, so we will be participating in that. That will give us also a first-hand experience to discuss what ecotourism is. Is it ecotourism or is ecotourism? What is bigger for you? Is the ecological part or the touristy part? And also we'll start thinking about what are we doing in Cuba. If we are tourists, why do we go to work somewhere? Do we want to be treated as tourists? What is the distance between a tourist and a local? That is sort of thing that we'll start discussing by then. But also, of course, there's time for a swim here and there. And then after Santa Clara, we'll go to the ridiculously beautiful city of Trinidad. Here you have some photos taken by last year's students. And in Trinidad, we will discuss again what is happening in cities like that are attracting a lot of tourists from all over the world. What is the impact that we as tourists have on locals? Is that a good impact? Are we giving them not only our money, but are we imposing our ways of doing things? Do they have to change so much that as a tourist we go to places that are not real places, though the authentic Trinidad? Is there an authentic Trinidad? After Trinidad, we'll be there 2 or 3 days. We will move to Playa Girón. Playa Girón is an interesting place because in 1961 the US tried to invade Cuba. We'll discuss whether it was the US or Cuban Americans living in Cuba. But we'll go to the very place where the invasion started and failed. Here it is on your, you see Girón, and this man here is of course Fidel Castro. You will be able to see this tank today in the museum. And also, of course, we'll go to a sugar mill called Australia, where we'll probably find many more Australians taking photos of themselves in the sugar mill Australia, but we will see why there is a place in Cuba called Australia. After Playa Girón, we will go again, we'll have a swim in Punta Perdiz, and then we'll make our way to Havana. After, as you can see, many students got by the stage and they were extremely tired, but we will make our way to Havana to wrap up and finish the course. It is also an opportunity to discuss how you feel about Havana, because you've been there twice. You first were in the first few days, then we went to the countryside, went to another cities. Has your perception of Havana changed? Was it a paradise in the beginning, and you think that maybe paradise is in small cities? How do you feel as a tourist moving around a country? We will do also the final assessment there that I'll explain in a minute. topics. Which topics are we discussing while we are in Cuba? First, you will learn a lot of, obviously, about the history of the revolution. You will be also discussing racism in today's Cuba. We will go in our second stay in Havana. We'll go to an Afro-Cuban area where we will talk about Afro-Cuban religions and the existence of racism in Cuba today. We'll talk about homosexuality, mainly in Santa Clara. We'll discuss a lot about the impact of Che Guevara's ideology in today's Cuba. As I said, we'll be talking about being tourists in developing country, pros and cons. We will discuss tips. How much is a good tip? Is that tip, can it be too much? If you give someone $5 as a tip, what is the impact of those $5 in the community? Because obviously the salaries in Cuba are much lower than in Australia. If you're giving someone $5, that may be the salary of another person in a week. So are we forcing people to leave some sectors to move to the tourist industry, and is that good or is that bad? We'll be discussing that. We'll be also discussing, as I said, about ecotourism. Where is ecotourism going and how good is it really for the environment in Cuba? And finally, we'll discuss basically anything that interests you. I know we take students that do other things in Cuba other than Spanish or other than Latin American studies. Last year someone came and did a study on some legal aspect in Cuba. That was a fantastic study. Someone has done things about biology. If whatever you are studying, our aim is for you to apply to Cuba other things that interest you, to the study of Cuba, things that interest you, no matter what you are doing at Monash. And finally, how will you be assessed? Well, first you will be asked to write 4 or 5 times what we call a reflexive portfolio about your experience, how you are feeling. If something doesn't go according to our plan, you will be writing about things that you like or dislike, how you feel in your relation with the locals, with the Cubans. Apart from that, you will do 10 quizzes. Before we leave Melbourne, you will receive 10 articles that are related to everything we are seeing. For example, when we go to Santa Clara, you will be reading the day before, or you will be expected to have read an article on homosexuality in Cuba. And at some stage during that day, you will do a quiz. Normally it's 10 to 15 questions, multiple choice, and 2% each. Here you see the students doing the quizzes in Havana and in Charco Azul, where we will not go next year. Last day you will have a group oral presentation, groups 2, 3 normally. It's about 20% of your mark, and the idea is to tell us about your experience in relation with some topic. For example, last year someone presented about music in Cuba, or censorship, or the way Cuba portrays itself to foreigners, etc., etc. Once you come back from Cuba, you will be expected to write a 2,500 word essay 3 weeks after you return on a topic that you agree with me. Again, we go back to the fact that this is an exploration unit. You are exploring Cuba, and you want to do something that you are enthusiastic about. You want to apply that to the study of Cuba today. Maybe you like music and you want to tell me about hip hop in Cuba, or you are studying sociology and you want to apply something to the study of Cuba today. That's up to you, and that will be 40% of your mark. And of course, we expect constant active participation in the course. The number of students is a minimum of 16 and a maximum of 20, so you will have a lot of conversations with me and with other guides in Cuba. Once you finish watching that, you may want to go to the PowerPoint that has been prepared by the Faculty of Arts, explaining to you how you can pay for this course, the ins and outs of the bureaucratic aspect of this course. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to contact me. My email was at the beginning of this video, and my phone number too. Hope to see you in Cuba.